I know you're excited about our guest, and you said he's a blast from the past, Christopher?
Yes, an extreme bass from the past. So we actually my startup he used to work at a startup called Packback, and they also went to the same university as mine. So I got in touch with the CEO, and then we had crossed paths after he had left Packback, and uh, was building a wonderful career around developing writing and blogging and helping other businesses. So I thought it would be great to have him on, talk about how he's helping other business owners really create great content and really grow their businesses. So super excited to have you on, Carl. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
All right. So, Christopher, go with the first question for Carl.
Yeah, absolutely. So usually when I hop into these, I love asking sort of really just basic question of like, how did you start your business with Draft Dev, and how did that transition from Pack Back led to
Yeah,
your
yeah.
evolution today? Yeah.
All right, so I'll give you the 2 second version because I know we're on a quick timeline. I was a software engineer for about 15 years, 12 years. I don't know, it depends how you count when I started. And then I was leading teams at small early stage companies. And so Packback, I was the first engineering hire. The next company I worked for was similar, as first engineering hire. So I was right there with the founders, watching them start these things. And I realized after 10 years of that, watching the venture cycle work, that I didn't want to do that myself when I started my own business. So the pandemic hit. I just decided to get out of the last business I was with and started my own thing, and that was Draft.dev. Draft.dev does a super niche thing. So if you're going to bootstrap a business, the big takeaway I had from watching years of venture funded and bootstrap founders get started was, if you're going to bootstrap a business, go super niche and go super small and just get started, get some like revenue and toehold, and then start building up from there, right? So what Draft.dev does is content writing aimed at companies that want to reach software engineers.
Mm.
Now we work with some of the top tier companies in the space of developer tooling, like Cloudflare, Dropbox, and companies that are building really cool stuff for software developers. Early days, a lot of really small startups. But either way, we were writing this super technical content that was used for marketing purposes. Very few marketing agencies could touch that kind of super deeply technical stuff. But my expertise as a software engineer mixed with knowledge of startups and marketing helped us get that started. Grew really fast. And I'll just give you the quick end of this and wrap this up, Chris. The first full year we did 1 million in revenue. The next full year we did 2.5 million in revenue. Then went
Awesome.
off and bought another business. So it's been a wild ride. But all again because we niched down, we were super specific with what we did.
And that's a very interesting point, is you do, and niche is for only a certain period of time. And for
Hmm.
lots of entrepreneurs, they make the mistake of not staying niche enough at first because it came out of nowhere. You can't complain. You make money, you're doing well as an entrepreneur, because lots of businesses don't even make any money. That's
That's
the
right.
Right.
first thing. That's the first darn thing. So if you're making money, give yourself that. But
Yeah.
ultimately, there is no playbook, but you're so right about the niching at first. But that means when you start your business, you really have to have a result that you wanted to start your business. Here's a quick story I'm going to tell you. I was in the tutoring industry, and basically, I also was working for another company. That company laid me off. I was tutoring, and I said, you know what? I'm going to start helping my clients do what I did for this one person I worked for. So I just started doing it. So I didn't think about what industry to niche in, what type of thing. And I just was doing all these specific things. Finally, now I want to niche again and say, forget it. I don't, yeah, I have a digital agency can do everything, but I really don't want to keep doing that anymore, because guess what? It's not going to bring the revenue. Niche first, get the money, then figure out if you have the right marketing and sales plan to do more. That's the problem with companies scaling. Wouldn't you agree, Carl? That they
Yeah,
get
yeah.
to a certain point,
Yeah.
they did really well, but when they scale, they it's done. It's over.
You can't scale a non-repeatable business model. That's the
Mhm.
ultimate takeaway. So a lot of people, the reason SaaS is so attractive, software as a service so attractive to investors, is that it is a truly scalable model. It just takes adding more computers to the back end to scale that thing. Service businesses are notoriously hard to scale because they take people and they take specialization and knowledge. That said, if you can sort of build a business around a repeatable process, it's certainly possible, but you do have to be willing to say no to some clients
That's right.
because they're outside your scope,
That's
and
hard
you
for
have to
me to
say
say
yes to
no.
just the good ones. It is
That's
hard.
hard.
It's
That's hard
absolutely
for me to
hard.
say no. I can't. As a
Yeah,
sales guy, and I
yeah,
talked
yeah.
to one of my colleagues, and this is where I'm always is, hey, if I have to kind of pivot, it's not a bad thing. You shouldn't get mad at
That's
yourself
right.
and give up,
Pivot to
because
welcome.
I was talking to someone that said I lost $100 million, and that was David Meltzer. He says, and I made it through. And I said, okay, if you've lost $100 million, David, and you made it through, and this is where you are today, I'm okay with making a change and kind of looking smaller again and doing it again. But this is
Right.
the
That's right.
thing, Carl, that people bring to the table. But go ahead, Christopher, your thoughts.
Yeah, no, that's a great, incredibly great point, right? Having a niche, I think is super great for, that go-to-market strategy and really knowing your customers in and out. So as you started draft.dev, how's that core vision for your business evolved? I know you started out sort of
Yeah, I mean,
creating
there
the
wasn't a
blog and
vision.
technical.
There
Yeah.
wasn't really a vision in the early days. I think a lot of people, I'm not saying every small business doesn't have to
I
have a
didn't have a
vision on day one.
vision. Dear
Yeah,
God, I didn't. So
it
I
was
told you
Neil.
that. But I've done well.
Exactly.
I made
Exactly,
money.
exactly.
I
Neil kind of hit it. It was like the first year was like, can this even work? Like, does
right.
anybody want to pay me for this? Right? I had never sold anything in my life,
Right.
anything significant, and I was going from being a software engineer, behind the scenes guy, to all of a sudden I'm like trying to be a sales guy. And so there was no big vision. It was like seriously, this was honestly the first 2 years. The big vision was I want to get this thing to a point where it's making me enough money to justify it, not going back and being a software engineer, and I want to be able to take one whole month off at a time. That was like a big
Mhm.
sort of criteria for me of running a successful small business because again, a lot of small businesses are optimized around built around the owner and they're too dependent on them. And those businesses are really hard to sell, really hard to scale. And so I wanted to
Right.
avoid that. So I figured from day one, let's aim towards the goal of like try to build this thing so I can take a month off. And when my second kid was born, took a month off. And that was like huge checkbox. And that kind of set me up to actually build a bigger vision, which I'm kind of working on now.
Okay. And so can you tell us a little bit more about that bigger vision now?
Yeah. So I started working with a business coach and I joined entrepreneurs organization, just the place I met here, and I got into a lot of bigger thinkers, like started to surround myself with people who were thinking about the next layer up and what to do once you do start a business that actually grows. And so what I'm trying to do now is build a portfolio of these niche sort of service businesses like draft.dev that serve a very specific industry
Mm.
and do a really specific thing that makes them kind of stand out from the competition. Lots of competition in the agency world. But because we're so specific, we can kind of stand out and we can charge a premium for what we do. And then what we'll do behind the scenes is start to consolidate some of the back office services that are required to run the business. So, say accounting, marketing services behind the scenes for each of these businesses. So, to that end, we bought our second company, my business partner and I, about a year and a half ago. It's called the Podcast Consultant. We do podcast production and editing for financial advisors primarily.
Awesome.
And then we're working on a couple acquisitions in the 2025 year. So we'll see where those go, but got some ideas.
It's a very, very good industry. That's where I'm niching is, but I've been doing this for 15 years. I've done 15,000 shows, number, I guess now back to 12. It went from 7 to 12. Celebrity podcasting, World According to Feed Spot, but ultimately it's radio, podcasting, TV. But what I do is be as the presenter to help these podcasts move and flow. And then once I get to a specific level, I'll figure it all out. But I've done it so much. It's so easy for me to
Yeah.
interview people. This is the biggest thing. People don't last in podcasts. You're very smart to take a specific industry, especially if you're willing to take the time to develop it. This is the thing. If you could pick, let's say, okay, I'm going to pick the medical industry for podcasting, and it's only going to be oral maxillofacial surgeons. Well, guess what? You're going to have to charge a premium and you're going
Mhm.
to have to wait. And it's hard when you've grown a business to say, I am now going to slow my process down and go do it. What are your thoughts on that, Carl?
Yeah, absolutely. That was my thought too. Because when my business partner and I were talking about building up this portfolio, our initial thought was let's start a second line of business. But instead, I was like, what if we just skip the first 3 years? Like, I don't want to go back to 0 to 1. Like,
I
let's
agree.
buy a company that's already got some legs under it. So we bought this podcast production agency that already happened to be kind of niched into this industry. They had never pushed their marketing and sort of sales direction in that way, but it just happened organically by referrals. So what we have done since is really push ourselves into that niche harder and like leaned into our biggest accounts, which all happen to be the finance industry. And that's allowed us to start the outbound campaigns that have allowed us to actually tack on more and more, as well as organic search. So it all like what again, we're going back to this niche thing because it's in marketing services, you will often get commoditized if you don't have a niche specialization or a really good sort of benchmark client that you can point people to
Interesting.
prove your worth until you get really big and you have a name recognition. But like nobody has that in the first few years.
Very good point. And the name recognition is getting on the phone and figuring all that out. But we make the mistake that we want to do all the things, and that's
Yeah.
Yep,
me.
that's right.
And then
That's right.
and you want to keep doing it
We
all
all do
over
that.
again.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I can do it all. Yeah, we have an agency to do all this. And now I'm like, no, I want to make this simple. And my
Yeah.
goal is, hey, when I'm in front of people as a presenter, get paid what I'm worth, and ultimately teach people podcasting and go from there. But
Yep.
ultimately, it's the content. Then they don't figure it out. Then they don't know how to go out and get lead gen, and they don't understand
Right.
the connection phase. Where it was very interesting. What I learned, Christopher, is what from somebody says, what's my best things? What am I best at? I'm best at sales. I'm best at as a presenter, having my platform, and I'm a great teacher because I'm a former teacher. Those areas I need to create a business like that now.
Yep.
That
That's
makes
right.
it difficult. And there is now the ability with AI to automate the entire business. The entire business. I'm not kidding you guys, as I was talking to somebody about these AI bots and with VAs, and basically just let it go. And it's not going to be this monstrosity of customizations and all this stuff because
Right.
I'll never have a life. You'll be in meetings every second.
So you just hit on an important topic that I actually wanted to. This is a totally question we didn't even originally have for you. But how has AI been affecting your business, right? As a mostly writing based business, how have you found ways to adapt with that and work with clients
Yeah,
on
great
new
question,
offerings?
Chris. So, here's what's changed. Now, some draft.dev has been less affected than a lot of content agencies, but a lot of content agencies have been pushed down to true commoditization. People look at writing as it should be cheap or free because ChatGPT can
Mhm.
write for me, right?
Mistake.
So yeah, yeah, and it can do some things fairly well. Like honestly, I'm a big fan of it too. So Neil, I'm with you. There's a lot of back office stuff that can just get automated. You just need a person up front to connect with people. But that aside, so here's what we've done at draft.dev. One is we've stayed truly very technical, like deeply technical stuff that is no one's writing about. So AI can't write content about things that haven't been
That
written
makes
about
sense.
before. It's one of its
Unless you
weaknesses
put the
in
input
today's
in,
world.
but you probably
Exactly.
use AI to start the process,
Exactly.
and then a writer
So
finishes it off.
that's right. So now what we have is software engineers who write a lot of our content. They may use AI to help them write faster and better, absolutely, behind the scenes. We have editors that are real humans that are going to clean that stuff up, make sure it sounds really good and flows really good and matches the client's expectation. And then we're going to get over to the client and it's going to fit into their marketing strategy. Then the other part of it that's helped us stay out of the sort of AI bottom tier is offering strategy as well as promotion of that content. So these are two things that
That's
take
right.
kind of a human's brain and understanding to do really well. So strategy of what are we going to write? Why are we writing this? What's the goal? Who is it aimed at? Where does it fall into our funnel of marketing content? And then promotion. How do we pay for this to get actually more views over time? Or what do we do organically to make it get more
Huh.
views over time? So
Yeah.
that's kind of how we've been able to sort of build out the whole funnel so that now we aren't just offering this one little commoditized service. We're offering a whole like suite of content marketing services that all work together to drive more leads for the businesses.
Yeah, I absolutely love that you're taking that solution approach as opposed to that very transactional. You're holding the hand of the client every way, step of the way. They know the strategy, they know what they're getting. And I think that brings so much value, especially as we get into this AI world and things become more robotic, right? I think
Yeah,
people
you
want
got to
that
find a
authentic
way,
touch.
right? You like ultimately people aren't going to be gone. I mean, people are here. We've always weathered every technological
Yes.
shift, right? But
Right.
you can't run your business like you did 10 years ago and expect nothing to change today. That's just always been true. I think this is one of those like I'll just rail against a myth I hear a lot is like passive, business income. Look, I mean, some businesses feel a little passive for a while, but very, very few, if any, small businesses are truly passive for decades. So if you're trying to build something that is decades long and going to give you like real income and sustainable wealth for a long time, it's going to require some active strategy. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be in there working 80 hours a week on it. Clearly, there's people who work very little on their business and they're successful, but you do have to be able to put the right people in the right places and keep an eye on the overarching strategy and how your business needs to shift because of it.
And then
Yeah.
people
No,
is a
that's
difficult thing.
right.
Yes,
People is a very difficult thing. It all
so
looks nice on paper, and
that's right.
that's not the case.
People
That's
are the
not the
hardest
case.
part.
The
right. So
people
to
are the
that point,
hardest part. Yeah.
So to that point, if I'm a newer or existing founder, can you talk about like what some of the importance is about blog writing and just being a thought leader or in
Yeah, I
general?
mean, so if you're an early stage founder, my sort of word of wisdom is do whatever marketing is comes natural to you because you have no other resources. Now, once you start raising money and you start building out a team, the conversation changes because you can start to hire specialists. But
Right.
early days, when you have very little money, basically the company's brand will be indistinguishable from your brand as a founder. So if you are somebody who loves to write or you love to podcast or you love to do, video blogs on YouTube or whatever it is, lean hard into that because it's easy for you. It takes no energy for you to do because you love doing it anyway. You would do it for free. You probably already have some audience there. So double down. So when I started Draft.dev, I started writing about the craft of writing technical content like we were writing. I wrote about it on LinkedIn, I wrote about it on my personal blog, I wrote about it on Draft.dev's blog, and that spun up our first probably 2 dozen clients, to be honest. And if I were somebody who was super experienced in cold email outreach, maybe I would have done that first. I mean, I'm not saying there's
It
one
just
or
all
right,
depends. I
right or
use the
wrong.
podcast. I use my podcast to get all my business. So I try to
Exactly.
teach
That's
other
right.
clients
Because
to
it's a
buy.
strength. Like clearly, Neil, you know how to do this. Like you can do it like in your sleep. You don't even need any mental energy to do this. So
No.
it's a great asset.
No,
Yeah,
I mean, I didn't have, Christopher told me the guess, but I just have a conversation and I'm
that's
so
right.
intrigued to dive deeper in with you. And that's the key thing is ultimately we are in this phase with AI that we have to become better, better
Mhm.
every week, better every day. And the ones that are not going to work harder are not going to survive this AI blitz, or you better
Yeah,
transition to something else. Ultimately, that's where I look at can connect anybody to anybody you want. You ask who it is, I'll get them that. That's where I'm changing what I'm doing. Did I know this? No, you figure this out as a business owner and you shift. And it was very interesting. My girlfriend Vanessa said to me, he said, you know what, Neil, you could literally go back to running a tutoring business and start doing SAT prep if everything died, and you'd still be making money and doing really well. It
that's
doesn't
right.
matter what you can sell. So it doesn't matter what I'm selling, I'm going to be able to sell. What is that saying? Maybe I need to teach people to sell because we can get on a call all day long. We can present that call, but can we really show people this offer is worth their worth in weight? If they can't do that, they're never going to grow their business, or they're going to
Yep,
always get a referral based business from their other clients, but never grow and scale.
that's
And we,
right. And to that end, Neil, too, I'll say that about writing, going back to your question, Chris, writing is a great way to refine what it is you sell and how you talk about
Mm.
it. So for a lot of us who are external processors, like myself, I need to put the ideas out there into the world in some way several times before I start to really understand how I think about that idea. One of those ways is writing. Now, of course, I also talk about it and also, post short videos and things like that. But like whatever medium works, but writing is just another good way to hone your thoughts and force you to think in terms of structure and organization. How do I pitch myself? How do I present my company? How do I talk about this to investors, to customers, to
Yeah.
interested people who might want to come work with me? So there's lots of advantages to writing, but it can be true of other mediums as well.
no doubt. And that's where you stick with your area. Someone told me to niche down 2 years ago. I didn't listen to them, but ultimately, I'm glad I went through the journey.
Yeah,
Now,
you got to learn.
so
You got to
I'm
learn.
creating now a business that's the strangest business because it's all of what my skill sets are the best. And then I'm going to
I
outsource
love it.
for other business, but that's easy because
Yeah,
that can be done. But
yeah,
ultimately, do what you're best at. Don't overextend yourself. And I don't want to be in meetings for hours on websites or SEO or strategy sessions. I want to be there doing what's best. And a lot of marketing, and Carl, you're a marketer, I'm a marketer. A lot of it's BS at the end of the day because if there's no sales, there's no business.
Right.
yeah. That's right. I mean, it's got to be followed up. Like marketing is just the starting point.
Sales, and how many people are willing to put themselves out there as a sales guy?
Right.
Not many people. So
And so if you were a founder that's starting to writing, you're getting into the process, how do you, I think when a lot of companies, when they measure whether or not writing or blogging is an effective strategy is trying to calculate ROI. How do you go about sort of making that short-term calculation and then tying that to sort of long-term goals as you're
Yeah,
talking to
I mean,
clients?
unless you come into being a writer, like if you're a founder, but you were also a very avid writer with your own audience and like your own skills at figuring out what works, likely your first year of writing is going to be shit. So you're not going to be like putting out stuff that goes viral. Like so don't tie your success to like the clients coming in your first year unless you came in with a lot of experience to begin with. So what I would say is you want to look for metrics that are encouraging you and helping you in a micro level, because
Mm.
again, you're not going to likely get a ton of hits in the first year, but if you can do it consistently, you will get better and you will learn what works and what doesn't. So some examples of that, like building a writing practice, getting yourself disciplined enough to actually write every single week is super important if you're going to do it. I've had several periods in my life where I've written daily, and then other times where I write once a month. I'm probably at a once a month cadence right now where I write a detailed, long, in-depth post about once a month. Um, so that's one way you can sort of test yourself going forward or push yourself going forward. Another is to have writing that spurs conversations and count the number of
Mhm.
conversations that come out because of a piece of work you've actually written. It could be something you share with 10 of your closest friends. Doesn't matter. The point
Right.
is get something out there that gets people to start talking. By doing those two things, like building a practice of writing and getting something that gets some even tiny group of people talking about it, you will get better. It's just then a matter of time, building up distribution channels. Marketing, what's hard about marketing is that you rarely see the fruits of it within 6 months of almost any marketing channel. I mean, very few are that quick to turn around. And so, for example, we've worked with a number of early stage startups that worked for with draft.dev for 3 or 4 months of an initial pilot. They didn't see enough results, despite the fact we told them this is going to take time, didn't see enough results immediately. So they paused us. And then they come back a year later and say, well, our biggest source of leads is those 12 blog posts you wrote us a year ago. Could we spin those up again and get going? It's like,
Yeah.
well, yeah, and then you just lost a year in the middle, which was great for you. But again, like you have to live this stuff to learn it. So I don't think that
Right.
I think a lot of people make that mistake assuming they're going to get, tons of leads in their first 3 months. Very unlikely. But if you look at it over the long term, it's compounding interest. And now, if you think
Mm.
about, like, if I think about my personal blog, brings in somewhere around, I don't know, 10,000 visitors a month of people that I would not be exposed to. It has an email list of several thousand people that, again, I've never had real conversations with, but they listen to everything I write. And that's an asset. I could build another company
That's
off
right.
that. Like Neil, you're talking about, you go back to the tutoring business. I could go figure out a business that works for those, several thousand people that are subscribed to my personal blog if I had to. So it's this compounding asset that builds over time. You just have to stick with it.
But
Mm.
and the thing that's also looking at sticking in a business, if you're seeing, but you also have to make those decisions. Is this the business you want? So, Carl, best
Yeah,
place people can find
absolutely.
info on you. Where can they go?
Yeah, carllhughes.com. Carl's with a K. That's the only trick. If you search for Carl Hughes and draft.dev, you'll find all my contact info and LinkedIn, all that good stuff.
All right, Christopher,
Right.
your best place.
Yeah, so you can find us at savantrepreneur.com. Replace EN in front of entrepreneur with savant, or check us out on Savant Life, Wealth, and Impact Show on LinkedIn.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Christopher.
Thank you so much,
Thanks,
Carl.
guys.
All right, that
Pleasure.
was a special simulcast Neil Haley Show and the Savant